Welcome to another episode from our studies in the book of Daniel, and this is our final video in Daniel concerning chapter 12, and then a few final remarks about the book of Daniel. I have no expectation that we now know everything we want to know about the book of Daniel. Speaking for myself in this study of Daniel, I have discovered some things I don't know and want to explore further in the future. But I hope we are well acquainted with the man, Daniel, and better acquainted with God, who is the Most High, who sent Jesus against all the efforts of men to push God out of their way. We complete our study this time here in Daniel chapter 12, and after I finish Daniel, I'll do a video study, a series of classes on the book of Galatians in the New Testament. Listen now to the reading of Daniel chapter 12. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, every one whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, two others stood, one on this bank of the stream, and one on that bank of the stream. And someone said to the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream, How long shall it be till the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the stream. He raised his right hand and his left hand toward heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it would be for a time, times, and half a time, and that when the shattering of the power of the holy people comes to an end, all these things would be finished. I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the outcome of these things? He said, Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed until the time of the end. Many shall purify themselves and make themselves white and be refined, but the wicked shall act wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but those who are wise shall understand. Verse 11. And from the time that the regular burnt offering is taken away, and the abomination that makes desolate is set up, there shall be 1290 days. Blessed is he who waits and arrives at the 1335 days. But go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. I have a couple of questions that I generally bring up to the class when we enter into chapter 12. One is to look at that phrase at the beginning of chapter 12, at that time. What does that mean? Back in chapter 11, we were considering the conflict, the chaos between the king of the north and the king of the south. We come to the end of chapter 11, and that conflict ends with the last phrase, Yet he shall come to his end, and none to help him. So that conflict in chapter 11 comes to an end, and chapter 12 begins by saying, At that time. Other questions come up. Who is Michael? Two angels of God are prominent in the book of Daniel, Gabriel and Michael. Gabriel seems to have been more of a messenger, delivering interpretations to Daniel and comforting and encouraging Daniel. Michael had a more militant role in the scheme of things. He was a leader of the heavenly host assigned to carry out God's will and specifically to protect the covenant people. It says here in verse 1 of Daniel 12, Michael, the great prince who has charge of Daniel's people. Michael is mentioned again in Revelation 12, where he does battle with Satan. So here in chapter 12, Michael is active protecting Daniel's people, the Jews. Now, Daniel's people, the Jews, would undergo a time of trouble, and some would be delivered. Who would be delivered? What group? It says, here's the phrase, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. Many books are mentioned in the Bible. Here and in Revelation, there is a book of record that belongs to God, containing the names of His faithful people. Those are the people who, in this time of trouble, God would deliver according to this promise. In Daniel chapter 12 and verse 1, Michael was involved in this. No doubt this was written to give hope to God's people who live through such crucial and cruel indignation. This phrase identifies the faithful remnant. Paul's here for a lesson. As God's faithful people, we are strengthened by Him to survive whatever hardship or conflict we may endure here on earth. So here's a summary of chapter 12. Through Michael, but from God, there would be deliverance from indignation for Daniel's people. Suffering, but surviving. Similar to the New Testament theme of suffering followed by glory for God's people. Good Bible students have suggested a variety of viewpoints about verse 2. Some believe this is a depiction of final judgment, and the point is, those who acted so wickedly toward God's people throughout the ages face this ultimate time of justice, raised to shame and everlasting contempt, which, by the way, matches up with what Jesus said about the general resurrection in John 5:28 and 29. Others say that this is more figurative and that it pertains to the resurrection of the Jews, that is to say, their belief in Christ when He came, and likewise the shame of those who rejected Him. Those who take this view sometimes call this a symbol of national revival. Another view is this is about the event written in Matthew 27:53, those who came from the tombs when Jesus was raised. The weight of my final understanding, my present understanding leads toward the first of these views, the final, ultimate time of judgment. That this is telling Daniel and his people, eventually, all scores will be settled, righteousness is rewarded, wickedness, on the other hand, leads to shame and everlasting contempt. Like the message from the book of Revelation, be faithful unto death. Righteousness will be eternally rewarded. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above. And those who turn many to righteousness, that's evangelism, like the stars forever and ever. So then Michael tells Daniel the following, seal this message until later. The implication is these things would be revealed later or unsealed, and I take that to mean under God's providence, the book of Daniel was written and later put into circulation into the hands of the Jews who would need this hope. Daniel didn't know everything he wanted to know about these things. I don't know everything I want to know about these things, but Daniel understood there would be a great division of people, the good and the bad, in an ultimate sense. Once again, at the end of the book, the message is things will be tough, but wait and be faithful unto death. verses 11 through 13. Hope is given to the aged prophet. Go your way till the end, and you shall rest and shall stand in your allotted place at the end of the days. Verse 13, Daniel is told not to worry about these things, but to go his way with full faith and courage. One of the resources I use in my study of Daniel is a commentary written by Tremper Longman, and I'm going to quote from that commentary here. I think it's better than any way that I could word it. Daniel 12 makes it clear that the wicked will ultimately get what they deserve, destruction and shame, while the godly will get what they deserve, honor and life. These themes are much more fully developed in the New Testament and are the basis of Christian hope in the midst of difficult circumstances. In the Gospels, we see Jesus Christ, God Himself, subjecting Himself to the suffering of the world, even enduring death. But Christ did not just die, He rose again. In 1 Corinthians 15, Paul develops the idea that Christ's death and resurrection formed a pattern we will follow. Christ suffered so that we, His people, might have hope for the future, death swallowed up in victory. The book of Daniel, before chapter 12, deals mostly with conflict during and after the 70-year exile that would impact Daniel's people, the Jews. Personally, I do not believe the book of Daniel gives us a roadmap with references to modern nations and interactions today, though in principle, all human empires fail. The book of Daniel reveals significant events pertaining to the Jewish people over a period of some 600 years. That's the historical context. And here is the main thrust. World kingdoms would emerge, and men would think this is it. God is out of the picture. The Babylonians are in charge of the world. Then the Babylonians are defeated by the Medo-Persians. After a time, the same thought of world domination would be entertained all over again, that God had no control. Now it's the Medo-Persians, but they failed. And then came the Grecian Empire and Alexander the Great. After him, war between the north and the south, with lesser kingdoms struggling for power, competing with one another, and the Jews in Palestine caught up in the crossfire. Such chaos, even the Jews must have wondered if God's covenant promises would ever come to pass. Daniel says, yes, they will. And they did. Jesus came, the everlasting kingdom was established, and as people responded to the gospel, they became citizens in that kingdom to awake to everlasting life. The Jewish nation was destroyed by the Roman armies in 70 AD. Then the Roman nation fell. We are citizens of a kingdom that shall never fail. Now, Daniel was able to know these things and write about this before it happened, though there were details that he didn't fully comprehend. God preserved this good man, upheld him as He did Joseph, and through Daniel and his book, the Jews were comforted and challenged to be the people of God and stand firm. I'm certain many who read the writings of Daniel said, thank God. His prophecies and visions were fulfilled, and every promise God made came to pass. Daniel would sleep the sleep of death, but all these wonderful things would come to pass. And we are witnesses and participants of the blessings as citizens in the kingdom of God today. Thank you so much for your attention to our studies in the book of Daniel. Remember that Daniel cared deeply about his people, and that therefore we should care deeply for one another, knowing that God never forgot His people, even when they were few in number and severely oppressed. The rise and fall of world empires and the struggles of men for power did not hinder God. When it was God's will to do so, He removed wicked men and destroyed their empires. The upheavals of men and nations on earth may cause terrible times and anxiety, even persecution against God's people. But we can know that God is watching, He is in control, and Christ will come again. Thank you.